On July the 1st, 2026, Princess Diana would have turned 65 years old. It was a milestone birthday she was never destined to reach, a milestone that the nation quietly carried in its heart for nearly 3 decades. In the days leading up to that significant date, the world watched Buckingham Palace with bated breath, expecting the usual institutional choreography. The royal watchers anticipated a grand formal statement, perhaps a staged photographic retrospective, or a carefully managed public ceremony designed for the glare of international television cameras. Instead, Prince William chose a path that almost nobody anticipated. He did not issue a public decree. He did not line up royal correspondence or stage a photo opportunity against a palace backdrop. He did something infinitely smaller, noticeably quieter, and deeply personal. And when the subtle details of his actions finally began to filter through to the public, they moved a nation that believed it had already shed every possible tear for the late Princess of Wales. This is not the story of a palace press release or an exercise in public relations. It is the story of a son who has spent almost 30 years learning how to navigate the agonizing balance between grieving under the relentless gaze of the world and protecting something sacredly private. On his mother's 65th birthday, William made a deliberate choice about how Diana would be remembered, who gets to define her memory, and, most importantly, who will carry her legacy into the future. This quiet moment was far more than a son paying tribute to his lost mother. It struck directly at the emotional core of the entire British monarchy. Diana was never simply William's mother in the eyes of the public. She was the most beloved royal figure of her generation, a woman who single-handedly reshaped what the world expected the crown to look like, sound like, and feel like. How her memory is managed is not just a matter of family history. It is a question of supreme institutional significance. The monarchy's relationship with Diana has always been fraught, careful, and at times profoundly painful. What William did on her 65th birthday quietly delivered a definitive answer to a question the palace has avoided answering for decades. Who ultimately decides how Princess Diana is remembered? The answer, as it turns out, is no longer the institution. It is her eldest son. To understand why this gesture resonated so intensely across the globe, we must look at the immense emotional landscape surrounding it. We must look at the heavy weight of the date itself, and why a 65th birthday brings a unique and aching kind of grief. We must examine the long history of how Prince William has chosen to honor his mother over the years, and what made this particular milestone fundamentally different. We must dismantle the gesture itself, piece by piece, including the heartbreaking detail involving 11-year-old Princess Charlotte that left veteran royal observers in tears. And finally, we must address what this silent decision means for the future of Diana's legacy as it passes into the hands of a new generation. Diana, Princess of Wales, was born on July the 1st, 1961, at Park House on the Sandringham Estate in Norfolk. She died in the early hours of August 31st, 1997, in Paris at just 36 years old. At the time of her tragic passing, Prince William was only 15, and Prince Harry was just 12. The unforgettable image of those two young boys, heads bowed, walking in stiff silence behind their mother's gun carriage as it wound through the weeping streets of London, remains one of the most haunting and indelible moments in modern human history. Following that devastating public spectacle, Diana was laid to rest on a small, tranquil island situated in the middle of an ornamental lake known as the Oval, located within the Spencer family estate at Althorpe in Northamptonshire. The secluded location was chosen by her brother, Earl Charles Spencer, who harbored deep concerns that a public grave would be relentlessly overrun by tourists and media. Surrounded by ancient trees and clear water, that private island has remained, for nearly 30 years, one of the extremely few spaces bound to Diana that the public cannot touch, and that Buckingham Palace cannot manage. To comprehend why the world still mourns Diana so openly, one must recall what she actually transformed during her brief life. Diana did not merely occupy a royal title, She fundamentally altered the emotional grammar of the House of Windsor. In 1997, she famously walked through an active landmine field in Huambo, Angola, risking her own physical safety to force global leaders to address a human tragedy they preferred to ignore. During the height of the global AIDS crisis, when fear, ignorance, and medical stigma told people that touching a patient was dangerous, she walked into a hospital ward, took a dying man by the hand without gloves, and smiled. She took her young sons to homeless shelters and pediatric cancer wards, explicitly insisting that they see the human beings whom the establishment chose to overlook. She did not simply patronize causes. She redefined the boundary of royal empathy, demonstrating that true authority comes from vulnerability rather than distance. She accomplished all of this inside an institution that historically valued emotional detachment, rigid protocol, and absolute restraint above human feeling. That was the true inheritance Prince William received from his mother, not merely a noble title or a kingdom, but a distinct way of walking through the world. A 65th birthday carries its own profound, specific ache. 65 is traditionally the age of retirement, the age of quiet reflection, the season when the chaotic rush of youth gives way to the gentle rhythms of senior leadership and grandparenthood. It represents the version of Diana that the world was robbed of ever meeting, the silver-haired global ambassador, the devoted grandmother watching over George, Charlotte, and Louis, the elder stateswoman of a monarchy she helped humanize from within. Every milestone that passes without her serves as a fresh, sharp reminder of the years that were stolen. Prince William has never hidden his grief, but he has always been extraordinarily cautious about how that grief is expressed throughout his adult life. He has marked his mother's memory in ways that feel intentionally chosen rather than publicly performed. On Mother's Day, he has shared rare, personal glimpses into his private archives, such as an unseen photograph of a young Diana crouched in a sunlit field, holding his small childhood hand. Through his landmark Homewoods initiative, aimed at ending homelessness across the United Kingdom, he has directly continued the work his mother introduced him to when he was just a boy visiting night shelters in London. Renowned royal biographers have long noted that William possesses an iron determination to ensure his children grow up knowing exactly who their grandmother was, not as a mythologized figure on the cover of a history book, but as a real, warm, and living presence within their family narrative. That quiet determination shaped every step he took leading up to her 65th birthday. According to those familiar with the family's private arrangements, William approached this milestone with a perspective entirely different from any year prior. The moment unfolded in three distinct, powerful movements. The first was the journey itself. Rather than organizing a high-profile public service or making an official appearance, sources confirm that William chose to make a strictly private pilgrimage to Althorp, away from television cameras, away from official royal photographers, and completely detached from the formal machinery of the palace. He stood on the banks of the quiet lake at Althorp, where his mother rests. For a man whose entire life from the moment of his birth has been recorded, analyzed, and broadcast to the globe, choosing absolute privacy was the most powerful statement he could possibly make. The second movement involved the deliberate inclusion of his family. Rather than keeping his grief locked away in isolation, William brought his children directly into the quiet heart of the day. A family insider revealed that William wanted George, Charlotte, and Louis to understand Diana beyond the monumental public icon the rest of the world sees. He wanted them to know the woman who would have embraced them, played with them, and loved them unconditionally. He spent time sharing personal, ordinary memories with them, the small, unscripted moments of humor, warmth, and maternal instinct that no biographer could ever document. He turned a day of historical sadness into an act of living family inheritance. The third and most emotionally devastating detail involved 11-year-old Princess Charlotte. Charlotte does not merely carry her grandmother's memory, she carries her name, being officially named Charlotte Elizabeth Diana. Those close to the Prince of Wales note that as Charlotte grows older, she displays an undeniable warmth, poise, and expressive spirit that mirrors her late grandmother. On this 65th birthday, William engaged in a deep, personal conversation with his daughter about the woman whose name she bears. Reports indicate that Charlotte asked the gentle, innocent, yet profound questions that only a child reaching toward a lost ancestor can ask. Observers describe the interaction not simply as a father comforting his daughter, but as a future king formally entrusting his child with a legacy. William was handing Charlotte a living torch, ensuring that the responsibility of carrying Diana's human touch moves seamlessly into the next generation. To truly grasp the emotional weight of this moment, one must hold it in stark contrast against the past. For the majority of Prince William's life, his grief was treated as public domain. He was just 15 years old when he was forced to march behind his mother's coffin under the gaze of millions of weeping strangers, an ordeal he later confessed no child should ever be asked to endure. His mourning was captured, packaged, and managed by an institution attempting to preserve its own standing during a catastrophic national crisis. On her 65th birthday, that historical dynamic was completely overturned. There was no royal procession commanded by palace officials. There was no staged portrait released to satisfy press demands. There was only a son, his young daughter, and the sacred memory of a woman whom neither the press nor the crown could ever fully control. William has spoken openly in past interviews about his relentless efforts to keep Diana present in his home, explaining how he regularly talks to his children about Granny Diana so they know she existed and loved them. On July the 1st, 2026, that private promise solidified into something beautiful and enduring. The legendary woman who once famously stated that she wished to be a queen of people's hearts was not honored by a cold, formal, institutional statement. She was honored by a son teaching his daughter how to carry her heart into the future. There is a profound, almost tragic poetry in watching that circle slowly close. Diana raised William to feel deeply, to express emotion openly, and to embrace human connection inside a royal system that traditionally resisted all three. Today, William is raising Charlotte to carry the name and spirit of a grandmother she will never physically touch. The grief surrounding Diana's premature death has not vanished, nor will it ever entirely fade. But on her 65th birthday, that grief finally found a quiet, permanent home. The implications of this shift extend far beyond a single anniversary. For nearly 30 years, the battle over Diana's narrative was fought between the public who adored her and the institution that struggled to absorb her impact. That battle is officially over. Her memory no longer belongs to palace PR departments or official historians. It belongs securely to her children and her grandchildren, who know her through the persistent, loving storytelling of a son who refused to let her be erased or institutionalized. July 1st, 2026 marked a quiet but decisive turning point in royal history. Princess Diana will never grow old in the physical world. She remains forever frozen at 36, a vibrant, breathtaking, and tragic figure in the world's collective memory. But the young girl who carries her name is growing up, stepping into the light with her grandmother's warmth in her eyes. And in that simple, beautiful reality lies the ultimate triumph of Diana's story. People do not truly die when their titles expire or when their monuments wither away. They live on in the quiet stories a father tells his daughter, in the values passed down through generations, and in the enduring power of a love that outlasts the crown itself.